So one of the things I get asked about most often is about my health and my mental health throughout my journey of, pre-med, medical school, residency, that kind of stuff. And people really having a lot of fears and a lot of questions about, if I have health issues or if I have mental health issues, am I going to be able to handle a career in medicine? And so I don't want my personal story to be an example of why, for example, you can't work in medicine. I just wanted to help highlight some of the issues about the system and about maybe what you need to be aware of personally when considering your career in medicine. So that being said, I'm sort of just going to walk through and share all of the details as much as I can, and hopefully that will be illuminating for some people, since this is something that people kind of want to pick my brain about, and instead of doing it in a one-on-one format, now I can sort of just share my story. And I feel like it's important to help break stigmas too, because I think that's one of the biggest things in terms of working in medicine is just still the stigma regarding if you have a health condition and working in medicine, or if you have a mental health condition in particular. And so this is me trying to share my story in an attempt to break some of that down and shine some light on where we still need to grow and improve in terms of reducing those stigmas in healthcare. So for me, if you want to learn more about sort of really the lead up to me leaving my in my residency position, you can check out the video Why I Quit Residency Part 1, where I really kind of go through what was my thinking at the time when I left, sort of where was my mental health at, where was my health in general at, and how did that play into my decision to leave residency. Check out that video. I'm not going to go in as in depth with that. This is going to be sort of more of a walk back of how does it all play together and sort of how did I get to that point. So as I may have mentioned other places, my senior year of college was the first time that I was ever diagnosed. I say diagnosed, soft diagnosis of anxiety or depression as I was applying to medical school. Basically, I spoke with my mom. My mom called and talked to our family doctor and was like, I'm concerned about Jessica. She seems like really stressed about this, but like more than just kind of the normal stress. At that point, I was turning in my applications and I had driven like 12 hours to visit my family and was just like breaking down in tears, like exhausted, just like not able to handle the pressure. And yeah, I had little bouts of like depression and stuff in high school, but had never been medicated or anything. And so knowing all of my history, knowing my family and everything, my physician at the time, my family physician, this is not where I was actually local in college, prescribed me Lexapro, which is a SSRI. And I say all of this and I'll go through sort of the details of what I was on or what I was doing at different times, just in case it's helpful for anybody. Obviously everybody's case is different, but I'm just happy and open to share all the different details. So I continued turning in my applications. I didn't really know if Lexapro was helping. I was kind of like, I still feel really stressed about this. Is this me? Is there something wrong with me? Am I going to be able to cut it in medicine? Am I going to be able to make it? I got accepted to med school and did pretty well my first year of med school. Didn't have any problems there, which was actually a little bit surprising considering that adjustment period, I actually felt like in parts of first year that I had more time than I anticipated because of the way that our schedule was broken up. We either had class in the afternoon or in the morning, and then we had the rest of the day to kind of study, and I didn't know how to manage my time. So it was like I was taking like naps or doing whatever. I was like, do I need to get a job? Do I need to be doing something else with my time? Which is like mind-blowing to people that are in med school to realize like that's some of the thoughts I was having early on. And then I realized, okay, I just need to be getting more involved. And so I did. I started getting more involved in starting our student-run clinic in the community. I started getting more involved in a lot of organizations on campus, and like that kept me busy outside of the studies because I knew that I couldn't just spend the whole day studying. Maybe some people can, but that also just wasn't how I operated. I had never studied that way, and so yeah, I just never did. So second year of med school, I started seeing a counselor. And I was just, I guess the motivation for that was just feeling like I was struggling, and instead of feeling like I had too much time. Now I felt like I couldn't keep up with things. I wasn't performing like I wanted to. I still was getting, good grades and stuff, but I just was just anxious all the time, I guess. And so I went to my physician then and tried to switch antidepressants and change Lexapro because I didn't feel like it had ever really truly helped me. And my doctor really essentially at that point advised me against it. And I think it was partially timing because I was going to be studying for my step exams, and I think she thought it was poor timing, and I'll chalk it up to that. But I had some other issues with this physician, which will come up later, and so I have no idea really what her motivation was. Then in my third year, I still felt like I wasn't sort of quote unquote normal. I wasn't operating sort of how I wanted to be, and so I asked to see a psychiatrist. I said, I have a family history of mental health conditions in my family. I feel like my med has never been optimized. I feel like it would just be I've already tried to see a counselor. I feel like, at this point, to me, like the next sort of step up was to see a psychiatrist. And I mentioned that to my physician, and she basically, I'm trying to paraphrase what she said to me because obviously this was years ago, without sort of misquoting her, but she basically was like, you don't want to do that. She's like, that'll look really bad when you go to get all of your licensing and stuff. You don't want to have that on your record in any way. And so she's like, I'm not going to refer you to a psychiatrist. I don't think you should do that. And that was essentially the end of that conversation. She knew that I had been seeing a counselor and stuff. And so I think she chalked it up to like, that's fine. I'm not going to do anything else for you. So after that, I was pretty disheartened, kind of feeling like, okay, I feel like I've been trying to reach out to all these different people and figure out what the heck I'm supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to feel better. And nobody's really giving me any real substantive assistance. So I actually ended up switching doctors. Long story short, that doctor had also been misdosing my levothyroxine. She had me on an eighth of the dose that I was supposed to be on, and until I was on my endocrinology rotation, I didn't realize that until we were learning how to dose patients. And then I talked to my endocrine attending and confronted, asked her about that, and she was like, no, you're being way underdosed. And so my endocrine attending wrote me the right script for the right amount, and then I ended up not going to see that previous doctor anymore. But anyway, so I went to a new physician, and again, I had sort of explained to her, and I think everybody chalked it up to med school is stressful, and you're just not handling the stress right, and certain parts of it are going to be worse than others, which I think, is all true. But I again requested to see a psychiatrist, and this time I had sort of explained to her that part of my concern too is that I have a history of migraines, and I was like, going on different medications for migraines, and just feeling like there is this interplay of that contributing to my mental health, also still trying to see the counselor, still all of these different things playing into it, and feeling like I needed a better complete picture of things. And that's why the psychiatrist, as opposed to a psychologist who doesn't have the ability to prescribe meds. And so she again said the same thing, said, no, I'm not going to send you to a psychiatrist. I don't think that's a really good idea. I'm going to send you to a neurologist, which was still a step in the right direction. And she also prescribed me bupropion, or Wellbutrin, and so I started on that. And that was helpful. She also wanted to send me for a sleep study to make sure I was actually sleeping well. And so this doctor had a much more holistic approach of okay, if you're not, if you're not feeling well, let's tackle this from a couple of different angles. Let's try an antidepressant. Let's see if we can get you sleeping better. Let's see if we can send you to a neurologist, which will help control your migraines. And so I really, really appreciated at least that aspect of stuff. I got sent to a neurologist who put me on a tricyclic antidepressant, which I couldn't tolerate. I think it was amitriptyline because of the side effects. And then essentially I had to really push him to try to put me on a prophylactic medication for my migraines. At that point I was having 3 or 4 migraines a week. Potentially it was the same migraine that was never going away and was just sort of bleeding through. And so I sort of kind of pushed him to really put me on a prophylactic med like topiramate, which is what I ended up going on, instead of something that was more abortive like a triptan, like if you've heard of sumatriptan or elatriptan or any of those other ones. And the reason I share all of this is because in a lot of these different stages, essentially I had to be my own advocate and really push for the things that I thought that I needed and thought that I wanted. And I still got denied in a lot of ways. And potentially the only reason they even considered it is because of my health background. So it just made it that much more frustrating for me to realize how much patients, even if they're advocating for things, get turned away. And so it was really frustrating. So going into residency, I was on bupropion. At that point I believe I had discontinued the Lexapro, and I was on levothyroxine for my thyroid and topiramate, which I was taking every day to prevent migraines. And the thing about the topiramate is I noticed right away sort of that I shouldn't say I noticed right away. I noticed at some point that I felt like I couldn't study the same way that I used to. I wasn't able to sit down. I had like this sort of like inability to find the words that I wanted most of the time. Not most of the time, sometimes. And I just felt sort of like kind of foggy and slower. And it got better over a period of time, or maybe I just got used to it. But that was another reason why I had wanted to seek care from a neurologist, a psychiatrist, somebody that was more involved with drugs, the brain, that kind of stuff. And so that sort of just helps paint a little bit of the picture of what my mental health was going into residency. My fourth year of med school was great. I think for most people it's generally pretty good. You're interviewing and you're going to visit different places, trying to figure out where you want to be, other than, the concerns about like being somewhat anxious for match day. But I didn't have a lot of anxiety regarding match day, or finding the right place to match. I was just, I don't know, the end of my last year of med school overall was feeling really good, pretty confident. And same thing going into my residency. It was just like I was a little bit anxious about starting that residency and feeling like I wasn't prepared, and this whole imposter syndrome thing, which I sort of addressed in the other video that I mentioned. But it was sort of just this underlying smoldering mental health thing, more than I was really that concerned going in that I wasn't going to be able to tolerate it, because I felt like I had finally sort of gotten my mental health sort of under control or under check. Part of that had been just figuring out what worked for me. Like, how do you self-regulate or calm and handle the stress? And that's one of the things that I sort of want to bring up just in this video is figuring out what works for you. Like for me, I had to just seek out things sort of on the side beyond what my physicians recommended. Like I started seeing a chiropractor regularly. I saw a massage therapist at least monthly. I started getting up at 4 a.m. to go train before med school or clinicals towards the end of my med school career, just because I felt better when I had more energy, and when I was also trying to essentially for weight control. Once I also figured out that I had obstructive sleep apnea, to try to get some weight off and that kind of stuff too. So the biggest thing is just feeling like you have to be your own advocate. And you really have to push for the things that you need. As I mentioned in the video about leaving residency, is at that time I didn't even disclose to anybody really how bad anything had gotten, because I had been sort of shut down so many times about how bad it looked to see a psychiatrist or to let anybody know really how bad your mental health care is, because they're going to restrict your ability to practice. It's going to go on your record. They're not going to let you get licensed, all of these different things. And so when people asked me that, when I told them I was considering leaving and was talking to my program director and all these things, are you depressed? I essentially said, no. Like I was sort of negating everything and sort of downplaying it, because I was scared. I was scared that was going to ruin everything for me. Okay, if I don't leave and actually do stay, how is this going to impact my ability to provide care to my patients? And I think that's the saddest part, is feeling like people can't get the adequate treatment and care and seek the resources that they need, because there's still this stigma, there's still this advice that they're getting, there's still this counsel they're getting that no, you shouldn't do that because it looks bad, because it'll come back to bite you, because of this, because of that. And I think in some ways it does for some physicians, because the medical boards still look at, information regarding your mental health. And if you've ever if you've ever had this or that, or had to seek out treatment for this or that, or been hospitalized in a psychiatric facility or whatever, questions that you have to answer. And honestly, I think it's doing a bigger disservice to physicians, to healthcare providers. I know they're trying to protect patients by doing that, but I think all you're doing is further burying a lot of physicians who are practicing with mental health conditions in general, that are going untreated because they know better than to seek treatment for those things, because they're afraid of how it'll impact their ability to provide care. And in the long run, it isn't impacting their ability to provide care. When you're not operating at your best, when you're not treated for whatever underlying condition there is, you're not going to be at your best. And so I think that's the most unfortunate thing. Just sort of as a summary, just to let people know sort of where I'm at now. Since leaving medicine, I've lost 100 pounds. I'm sleeping better than I ever have. I don't have obstructive sleep apnea anymore. I have migraines, but they're less frequent. I'm no longer taking an antidepressant. And I don't say all of that to say that if you have a mental health condition, you can't operate within medicine. I think the biggest thing for me was not feeling like I could push for myself a little bit more, and also not understanding myself and what a lot of my triggers were in terms of what was causing me to be so stressed, to have so many migraines, to not be sleeping well, to all of these things. I think the better you sort of know yourself and know who you are and know what triggers you and know what you can do to cope with it, like if running is good for you, if journaling is good for you, if, the things that you need to keep and not sort of deny even as your time gets crunched, even if you need to meditate for 5 minutes, whatever it is that you need to keep as medicine kind of gets more stressful and your time gets more crunched. I think it's important to have that stuff sort of figured out before you go into a system like medicine, because it's only going to exacerbate and highlight all the problems that you already had. If you already had an eating disorder, if you already had depression, if you already had this or that, I think it's just going to shine a light on it. And so that's my biggest thing, is just having people realize like you're never going to be in a perfect spot to kind of start your medical career, and it's a lot of years of training, but trying to be as self-aware as you can and know what works for you and know what doesn't. And even when people say, no, you can't do this, to really advocate and push for yourself, and not be afraid to share and tell them what care you need. Because I think if I had done that, I would have had a potentially different outcome. Ultimately, I don't think medicine was the path for me. And so I don't think that this, me having a mental health condition really was the end all be all to my career. But it definitely played a role and a factor in terms of me deciding to leave. It definitely pushed me in that direction and made me realize, sort of got me there faster. And then I realized, okay, I'm having a lot of trouble with this. I'm struggling. Now I've got to decide, is this something that I really want to do? Is it going to be worth it? Is this the right type of hard or struggle for me? And ultimately it wasn't for me. It wasn't what I wanted to be spending my time and effort doing and struggling with. And that's okay to have that realization that for me, this wasn't my path and this isn't what I wanted to do. But it would have been nice if it wasn't sort of the issues with mental health that would have brought me there, and I could have just had that realization on a different front and at a different place. So just wanted to share that.